So it's been a little bit of a while, but hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So in today's update, what I really want to do is to take a revisit once again to talk a little bit about the unemployment benefits situation, because we do finally have some brand new updates. I do know is that obviously most people probably know is that sadly many, certainly the core programs, because there are still a couple programs that people are currently on, such as like about the vaccine mandate, specific state unemployment programs, very niche, specific, but certainly it's very fair to say is that the big programs like the PUA, the PUC are now officially over and has been over for a few months now. But of course, with that being said, unemployment people are still very, very much out there, and there are still definitely a lot of need, or certainly a lot of people that could definitely use some need. So in today's update is I really just want to keep up to date of everything that's been going on there about just general news. There is a brand new bill that I do know that recently just came out, so I do want to share that. This bill actually is not necessarily about doing an extension, but it's more about changing the unemployment program just in general. But I figured at the end of the day, because it is related to unemployment, it's probably still something hopefully relevant to know, especially with a lot of the Omicron rise, the cases, and the fact that it's very, very fair to say that there's already a lot of controversy that many people believe that the current numbers and the new claims, which we'll also share that, can be a little bit skewed because there were a lot of people that, fell off of unemployment but may not have necessarily been accounted for, especially because of the recent rise and many people that are currently staying home. But we're going to talk about everything in today's update, so definitely stay tuned to get all the information. So as always, real fast before we begin, as always, consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing and hitting the bell if you guys are brand new here. Of course, you guys can decide. Huge thanks as always if you guys have been here, for a while. Always really awesome and happy to see new people. Means a lot. And as always, feel free to comment maybe any questions, personal thoughts about maybe honestly anything. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So maybe to just start talking about just the general federal unemployment situation, just because this is the one that applies to every single person across all 50 states. The big thing that's really going on right now is that admittedly right now in Congress, they're definitely spending a lot more time focusing on things like the Build Back Better plan, stimulus programs, so other kinds of stimulus things. So for example, like stimulus checks, child tax credits, Social Security, all of that stuff. So because of that reason, admittedly, unemployment has been relatively quiet, specifically on the big federal level. There are certain programs and there are still many people that are still claiming unemployment every week, but I would say is that the biggest focus when it comes to just unemployment programs are probably going to be just seeing it already happen and hopefully even more happen, but on much more targeted levels. So for example, like there are many states that came out with like programs related to people that might have lost work related to something about the pandemic, whether it's because they lost work related to the pandemic, whether it's because they caught the pandemic themselves, or because they didn't want to go through with the vaccine mandates. That's something that actually is very much happening. We did make a video already talking about that, so I might put that at the very, very end screen as just a really huge recap. But if anything, it'll probably be on my channel page. You can kind of just scan through that talks about vaccine mandates, related unemployment, and then other, of course, specific kind of unemployment programs. But to maybe start now to focus on like just other kinds of parts is that there is actually admittedly one brand new bill that was recently just written up by the GOP Republicans, but specifically in Wisconsin. So they're potentially looking to maybe do this program in Wisconsin, but there are a lot of talks that they do want to try to propose it and push it on a very huge federal level as well to apply to a lot of other states. Now, the one thing about this program is that this specific bill that is very, very subtle, so you may or may not have heard as many people talk about, but it's not necessarily to do an unemployment extension, but what it is to try to create a trigger system inside of the unemployment program in order to, and I guess this is the part that's a little bit harder to say, but the idea really is that they're going to be using a trigger system to determine how long the actual unemployment program is for people that even try to apply for the regular traditional unemployment. However, many of the articles and the goal, the more subtle goal that they're not really talking about, is that if this bill was able to go through, it actually means that it's going to actually reduce a lot of the time length of the current unemployment program. So actually, in a very, very sad way, actually this program for a lot of people is actually going to be a downgrade actually. And I think the logic is because right now there is something, as many people know, called the Great Resignation, where, and this is, I guess, the background story to how this bill came to be, but because of the recent story with the Great Resignation, there are a lot of people that are resigning their jobs. Maybe I'll make a video. I'll definitely look into that, because I know it's a very, very interesting topic. Maybe comment if of interest. But the big idea is that because there's a lot of people that are either losing their jobs because of the current situation or voluntarily deciding to resign their jobs, what it does mean is that there's a lot of controversy and skewness in terms of what the actual numbers are. But because they also realize that right now there's a little bit more power with the employees, which is really awesome because that's a lot of us here. The big idea is that they want to use this program in order to make it harder to physically get onto the unemployment program in general, but also so that even if people were able to actually successfully get onto this program, because right now we already start to see the numbers every single week start to decline, in the sense that it's not to say that it is better, but in data, in reports, in numbers, in claims, every single week we can start to see the graph improving. What it does mean is that if they do end up having this program go through, because it is based off of a trigger system, and because they already know that the trajectory of the job market is that it's starting to relatively go down, it is going to reduce the length. So instead of lasting for maybe about, I'll just give an example, depending on the state, but 24 weeks, they might now be reducing unemployment to only about like 12, 13, 14 weeks. So that is really what this bill is about. And I think in a lot of ways, when it comes to just people resigning jobs, I think it's very, very understandable, because I think at the end of the day, and this really has been the core, I think, of this, like just even this channel in general, is that a lot of this stuff is not just about trying to get people to find work easily, but it's also about trying to get people to find quality work. And I think that's the most important thing. So it's not like we're being forced to take a job for the sake of taking a job, but that we're hopefully able to get something that actually is of interest, and that can hopefully actually satisfy us within means, because at the end of the day, I think it's fair to say is that there's a lot more to life, I think, than just working hours and hours. And even though it is absolutely important, very important if anything, to pay bills and take care of everything, at the end of the day, after a certain point, it only does so much if we're working a job that is coming at a lot of opportunity costs, that maybe isn't paying us like a sufficient enough wage. So there is a practical incentive too. Even if we were trying to make lots of money, it only does so much if the wage isn't really up to par. Many people believe that we should be trying to raise minimum wage. Of course, that probably depends on the specific location, but it is definitely that there's definitely a sizable population that would really love that very, very much. And at the end of the day, it's also about a lot of other things, like the hours, the working conditions, the safety, especially with, again, the pandemic still going on. And I think that's really the biggest goal in the debate that they're really having on right now. Now, I do know maybe something else to also share in general is that there are also a lot of states right now that are trying to demand certain people. You might have heard articles, and you might have even gotten a letter about that. Feel free to share a comment. But there are several states right now that are trying to essentially, because of a lot of the fraud situations that came up, they are now sending letters to many people inside in order to try to demand unemployment, in order to demand them to return and pay back some of the unemployment that was sent out. I do know is that the interesting thing is that there are some people that should not have received that letter, but did have that letter because they were just suspected of having it happen. So the ironic thing is in a lot of ways, there are now people that are getting sent fraud letters to be accused of committing fraud. And so that's kind of the situation that's happening. So if that does end up happening, I think the big thing really is that the letter will probably just tell you general information about what you have to do to prove that everything is very legitimate and authentic. And I would say the best bet is really to just read through that letter and try to just respond as best as you possibly can, show proof that everything was very legit. The most important thing is that they just want to make sure it's real. And so if you do end up getting that kind of back payment letter where they say like, we want to get it back, you know, we want you to pay back your unemployment, and for some people they're trying to demand something in, let's just say, the thousands of dollars range, that's probably the best move. But I figured it is something that if it's either already happening to you, or if it does end up happening, to maybe just prepare for it, especially with tax season currently now coming up. But beyond this is that I do want to just quickly insert about the unemployment claims that recently just came out for the most recent week, so which is actually about 2 weeks ago. So it came out last week, but for the week prior to that, is that the new unemployment numbers came out right here. And the big idea is that maybe one thing that is interesting is that it did recently jump where about 230,000 people filed for unemployment. The significance of this is because this is actually the first time we are now seeing a rise again. They originally anticipated about 200,000, so they obviously fell off by about 30,000 people, so about 10%. That's a lot of people, you know. In a country, when you have 10% of 1 million, just, you know, as an example, 10% of 1 million is 100,000 people. So in a country of over 100 million, that is a lot of people. But the big idea, really the significance is that they also found that this is actually the first time they saw an increase ever since November of this large. And it kind of does, maybe many people can, you know, kind of see why this is going on, is probably because of the Omicron situation, because there were a lot of places, a lot of events I know were canceled. I work in that industry, so I totally feel it right there. Anyone that works in hospitality, travel, leisure, events, entertainment, basically jobs that involve working and talking directly with people, a lot of those jobs were pretty much impacted more or less. And it's because of that reason they did see finally a recent rise in spike of the cases going up, or the claims going up once again. I do believe is that there's still about 1.5, 1.6 million people that are actively claiming every single week. So not 1.5, 1.6 million people unemployed, but 1.5, 1.6 million people actually claiming and collecting unemployment every single week. And now, how many people are unemployed and not claiming? That's much more debatable thing because we don't have information, but feel free, you know, to maybe comment if you guys have any particular opinions. But beyond that is that's what I really wanted to share in today's update. So if you guys found something relatively insightful, maybe consider smashing the like button if you guys haven't done so. Huge thanks if you guys already did, and as always, consider subscribing and feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly just anything. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, stay strong as we're trying our best to get through this, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.